I still have some questions, so we're going to talk about Star Trek Discovery one more time before the last episode, after this. I'm the oldest nerd. Here's what we seem to know so far about Star Trek Discovery as they approach the last episode of this season. Now, the producers have said before in their public statements that the Klingon War would be over by the end of the series. Now, this strikes me as being just like they were in The Next Generation, where very often they would have a very complicated story that would build up and they would solve the whole thing in the last 10 minutes of the show. And that's what it looks like they're doing here. They've spent the entire season building up a pile of all kinds of trouble, and then they're going to solve the whole mess of it in one episode. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. And there's some questions that I have before we get there that are worrying me right now. First of all, the mirror universe has been classified. Okay, so now it's top secret. Nobody that's on the ship that's been to the mirror universe can say anything about it. Okay, fine. So that fits canon that the mirror universe has not been mentioned before the original series, ever since the 100 years before that Enterprise NX encountered the mirror universe. So for whatever reason, they decide that that has to remain classified. Okay, fine. Then they take the real Einsteinian direction of putting Emperor Giorgio, who is now masquerading as the deceased Captain Giorgio, to take command of Discovery and go do what Lorca might have done to the Klingon homeworld, which is something that looks like if she gets her way, she would vaporize the entire planet. We know this doesn't happen because Kronos exists in later versions of Star Trek lore. So what we're going to have to do is find out how she gets stopped. Now, they're already seeding that a little bit by having an alliance now between Saru and Michael. So it seems that between the two of them, looking at the better parts of Starfleet, that they will somehow manage to stop her from completely committing genocide on Kronos. But how they do it and how they get away with it is going to be the thing, because the entire Starfleet seems to be behind the fake Giorgio, who the top brass obviously knows is the Emperor of the Mirror Universe. So something's going to happen to her. Also, about Lorca. Now, they have been so determined, in the Admiral's words, that Lorca died. Possibly he was switched out onto the Mirror Universe version of Discovery and died when that ship was blown up in our universe, which is also something in a Terran Empire kind of way, where they would have had their shields up and their weapons charged before they even saw any threat. It's odd that they would get destroyed when Discovery didn't. Now, some people are saying that the Spore Drive did not work on the Discovery in the Mirror Universe, and yet they were able to change places. So how do they do that? Well, the way they've shown it before is only one side has to be able to cross the universe and the other one just compensates. So I think they could explain that pretty easily. But I'm still of the belief that Lorca is going to show up again in his prime universe self that we have not seen in the show so far, and might take a big role in this. I could be completely wrong. Jason Isaacs could have been telling the truth when he said that his storyline was over in the Discovery series. Then we have Ash Tyler. Last time, the last video I did, I mentioned that Ash was probably just a soap opera thing to be this on-again, off-again relationship with Michael. And they used him a little bit to show that the true Starfleet people are compassionate, because first we have Tilly and then we have other members of the bridge crew that'll sit at the table with him, and even though Stamets sees him in the hall, but when he apologizes, he at least admits that he's at least showing some remorse. There's at least something to that. So in all of this reconciliation, it's been suggested that perhaps Ash is acting and perhaps even the operation was not to excise the Klingon at all, but to make him appear like it did, and for the Klingon still to be there with the memories of Ash Tyler, rather than Ash Tyler with the memories of the Klingon. So we could still have a ticking time bomb going on Discovery. Also, that's something that's going to have to be settled pretty quick. Starbase 1. Now, Starbase 1, in all of the Trek materials I've ever read, is Earth. And in fact, if you look back at the still of Starbase 1, where it shows the markings of the Klingon house on it, you'll see the continents on the planet in the background are the North America. So we are definitely in orbit around Earth. So the Klingons have taken Starbase 1. Does that mean they've taken the Earth as well? And are they going to address that? Or do they find Earth not to be quite as important to invade because the Federation is so big? Also, there have been a lot of questions about this green spore when they were blown out of the mirror universe after torpedoing the Emperor's ship, and one green spore soaks into Tilly's shoulder. What does that mean? Is that the evil Lorca, who has fallen into the spore drive of the ship, and now one spore of him still exists and is going to invade her, and she's going to become evil Lorca, or what? Or is this something completely different? Is she going to have some kind of mystic powers after this that will be the go-to every time they have an emergency, like they did with 7 of 9 in Voyager? Because it seemed like every time they got into trouble, 7 of 9 had some new Borg talent that nobody ever knew about before that could get them out of their mess. Is this going to be what Tilly becomes now? She's going to be their all-purpose, easy-to-settle plot. And then what about Stamets? Now, you know, his relationship with the Doctor has been very much a big thing that was promoted before the show started, and the Doctor was eliminated pretty quickly in the series. And is there going to be a way that he comes back? Now, we have already talked about the fact that this whole thing may be a time travel deal where everything gets settled by time travel. And as I said before, I think that's kind of a cheat. I have a feeling that if they're going to do this right and where everybody is happy with it, they're not going to be able to just go back in time and say, okay, everything that's happened is nothing, and that Michael is still a commander, and Giorgio is still alive, and everybody else is still alive, and then they find out where Mirror Lorca is and they arrest him and throw him in the Federation jail. We'll see. I'm hoping that that's not what they do, but still, I'm thinking there must be something that they've got in mind in order to make things right with some of the people that have died so unceremoniously as the Doctor did. So I'm hoping that we see something there. And then the Spore Drive. Just as we thought that they had figured out how to get the Spore Drive out of canon by just destroying it all and then it becoming a footnote in history, therefore not mentioned in later series, they managed to cheat. Once again, they find a moon and they terraform it and they make a whole new spore nursery. And this nursery has enough spores that they can refill the whole ship's thing, and they can do everything that they could do before. So what is going to stop them from the spores being the major propulsion through Starfleet? They've got to have something reckoning with that. And they've already settled the problem with Stamets, was that he was not being so affected by the spores physically, but rather he was seeing glimpses of the mirror universe. So are they going to have to eliminate the Spore Drive in order to keep us out of the mirror universe? Or is there something else that they're going to have to introduce once again in the last 10 minutes of the last show of the season? That's my thoughts on the matter right now. So if you have some thoughts, I'd like to hear from you. Please do. I thank you to all the people who've subscribed so far. It has made my days as I see them come in. So thank you very much. And until we see what happens in the last episode, don't go far.